F you, NVIDIA.
How does a company fall so far? And how does a company lose sight of its audience? We've never seen something like that before.
I promise I'll talk about AI.
So this was their recent conference over at Computex, a big trade show. And in this specific presentation, he talked about gaming for about, I don't know, 2 minutes or so. And maybe about a minute of it was actually about the new graphics card coming out. Like the dislike ratio on this video, they're bad. And also at their CES presentation, which is specifically the Consumer Electronics Show in 2025 here. So this wasn't even that long ago. They disabled dislikes or likes from people. You can't even comment on these type of videos. So like obviously NVIDIA knows that a lot of people aren't going to respond very well to their stuff. It's like, oh, these are just people disliking the videos from NVIDIA. Like people just don't like the marketing. What are reviewers saying? What are YouTubers saying? That kind of stuff. Huh. So that doesn't look that positive. That doesn't look positive. Well, that's kind of negative. Daniel Owen's also posting stuff. These are kind of negative. Jay posted stuff. I don't know, but NVIDIA sank to a new low. NVIDIA, why are you the way that you are? If you thought NVIDIA couldn't get any more scummy, guess again. NVIDIA tried to stop us from talking about this graphics card, and now he understands why. The 5080 is actually an RTX 5070, so that doesn't really look great either. 5070 Ti, oh man. Hardware Unboxed kind of going in. 5060 Ti, 8GB, instantly obsolete. NVIDIA screws gamers, 8GB dead and buried. NVIDIA bribes reviewers, the 5060. Wow. NVIDIA confused of manipulating gamers nexus, our thoughts. 5060 review, NVIDIA didn't want you to see this. NVIDIA damaging PC gaming. Has NVIDIA blacklisted us again? NVIDIA didn't want to make the RTX 5070 Ti. 5070 equals 4090? Yeah, Gamers Nexus goes in. Even from Paul's hardware here, he is also going in on NVIDIA. This doesn't really look that good. It doesn't look like a lot of people are really liking NVIDIA at the moment, which hasn't always been the case. This has been a slow decline for NVIDIA. Like their brand reputation as a gaming company has changed quite a bit. Because as you guys know, NVIDIA was pretty much, I'm not sure if they were exactly the inventor of the GPU, but they're pretty damn close to the inventor, the original GPU, back in like the 90s. That's when GPUs started to come around. These render graphics on your computer, which means it's pretty much core to any gaming experience you could ever have. How has NVIDIA ended up in this situation where basically like any presentation they do, people are very, very unhappy, and you can't see it here, but there actually was a live chat. I remember watching this live. People were so negative about this, but now they've hidden the chat replay for their new type of presentations. But where has this decline began? Has this always been a root thing for NVIDIA? Well, just to let you know, I'm like relatively young. I'm 23. I'm talking about it from my perspective. So you might be able to see some different perspectives. You might have some more. So leave them in the comments below if you can see some more points as things have led to this. But one of the big things that I remember back in like 2017 when the GTX 1080 Ti came out, obviously legendary graphics card, awesome graphics card that everybody has really, really enjoyed that card. This was the announcement of it. This is freaking 8 years ago. You can see young Luke from Linus Tech Tips, like he looks so much younger here. This was an interesting event because nowadays Luke has actually gone back into that situation and talked about how the GTX 1080 Ti was actually a pretty manipulative launch.
But if I remember correctly, they didn't tell us stuff like the price and a few other like really key things that if you published an announcement video, you would really expect to have.
Which does seem a little scummy, but not really that weird as of yet. But things do start to get a little bit worse because quickly after that whole event, it's weird seeing all these people so much younger now. But here's Tim from Hardware Unboxed, March 2018, not that long after. It is the NVIDIA GeForce Partner Program. Could be bad news for us all. So basically what the GeForce Partner Program was, because it did get destroyed, NVIDIA like completely canceled it because it was so anti-consumer and they're actually getting antitrust issues with it. Basically what this did was partner with companies, some for example like Asus, MSI, and Gigabyte, some other companies out there. Wikipedia says at least the program was regarded as an anti-consumer practice due to the fact that partnering companies were required to remove their gaming brand from all NVIDIA graphics cards. They had to take off the gaming branding. They couldn't even brand a graphics card for gaming, even though it renders goddamn graphics. It makes no sense whatsoever. So this was obviously pretty anti-competitive. Partners are allowed to work with other companies, not just NVIDIA. So everybody pretty much saw this as a pretty negative thing, just like how Tim was talking about here way back in 2018. Now this has taken new forms I think this is still somewhat a thing, maybe just not as aggressively in your face, but the NVIDIA partner network now exists. Like say down here, like cloud partners, data center providers, distributors, a bunch of other companies that they partner with probably push their brand a little bit. We know that a lot of companies are scared of NVIDIA because even though they partner with them, NVIDIA holds a lot of the power.
Putting pressure on your partners, maintain pricing in the channel or whatever, it's part of the broader NVIDIA behavior that puts their partners in a position of constant fear.
So this doesn't look great, but the GeForce Partner Program, at least it was a W because it did end up getting canceled in May 2018 because of how bad it actually was. But you can kind of see where NVIDIA is starting to lean. They're trying to leverage their power to control the market and try to form a monopoly or something like that. Then we move to a new thing, and this is NVIDIA RTX. I know you guys probably remember back in 2018 when they changed GTX to RTX because they're pushing ray tracing. Now, this was back when presentations were still pretty good for NVIDIA. Like most of this presentation was talking about gaming and rendering ray tracing using DLSS upscaling. And as you can see, the like ratio is still pretty good on this. This was introducing ray tracing in DLSS, which does lead to a lot of problem as we see in the future. The first thing is how hard they were pushing ray tracing. Not that ray tracing is a bad thing. I think ray tracing is actually pretty cool. Literally in the game, it casts rays to basically try to simulate light, like real life light inside of a video game. So you can see like reflections and stuff from around corners or anything perspective correct. It's gonna get realistic bounce lighting. So like if you had like a red wall or something, this would be real lighting like that inside of a game. This is where ray tracing or real-time ray tracing in games started to come around. I remember back when this happened, this was the video that I remember like really stuck out to me. Jay's 2 cents covered Battlefield 5 with RTX on. Now this is a weird situation because ray tracing only launched with like one freaking game. It only had ray traced reflections at the time. And what I think was really funny is how much performance you lost by playing on it. For example, here, this was without ray tracing on, he was getting 150 FPS. And then when he went on to like ultra ray tracing, he was in like the 30s, maybe 40s FPS. So not really great in terms of the performance, but ray tracing genuinely had some nice benefits. Like it looks cool. It's just extremely intensive to run. Obviously, we know today that NVIDIA still pushes ray tracing extremely heavy, something they want to hold over AMD because AMD is further behind in ray tracing at the moment, even though the new cards are starting to look a little bit better with the ray tracing performance. But obviously NVIDIA wants to push this because they get better performance with ray tracing. The graphics can look better, although sometimes I actually think they can look worse. And that was really the big controversy with RTX when it launched. I mean, the GPUs themselves weren't very good value, and they introduced the RTX 20 series super cards, which started to look a little bit better. That was a situation with the rest of 20 series. That's where it really starts to compound a lot of those things, because when they introduced 30 series, there's a huge uplift in terms of their ray tracing performance. On the surface, 30 series looks pretty good. I mean, look at these performance numbers. The 3070 is beating a 2080 Super by quite a bit. 3080 is completely gapping the 2080 Super, and these aren't using any like weird performance hacks like, DLSS or frame generation like we kind of see today. Some manipulative things did start to take place because right off the bat, NVIDIA did market this GPU to be able to game at 8K. 8K gaming on a 3090, which was kind of cool, I guess. But NVIDIA sponsored videos for here, like Linus, they did a sponsored video with 8K gaming, and also Marquez Brownlee. Technically speaking, the 3090 could play at 8K. But at the time, TVs and stuff were the only option you ever had to run 8K at all. And those TVs were like $30,000 or something. As time has gone on, actually, companies are making less and less 8K displays because it is such a pointless thing to be able to run. 4K is like almost always sharp enough at any screen size. But this is another case of NVIDIA sponsoring people, trying to push something that really didn't apply to that many people, trying to control the narrative going out. It's like, oh, only the NVIDIA graphics card can do 8K gaming. What was really bad with the 30 series launch was actually things like this, because Hardware Unboxed, for example, obviously very, very stable, very good reviewer, and NVIDIA bans Hardware Unboxed, then backpedals. So basically, NVIDIA was trying to cut off samples or any review material for Hardware Unboxed. No place is entitled to get review samples or anything like that, but it's really the way that NVIDIA went and did this, because we just talked about ray tracing and everything, how intensive it is. NVIDIA was trying to say that Hardware Unboxed wasn't covering ray tracing heavily enough, that ray tracing was the future of gaming, and and Hardware Unboxed is like, people don't really use it. The video is like, hey, you need to cover this more, and Hardware Unboxed is like, no, like we covered enough. We think it's useful to a certain point, but it isn't really the only thing to be talking about with these graphics cards. It's not an advertisement when you make a review, it's a freaking review. So this was an instance of Nvidia trying to shape the narrative and literally withhold samples from Hardware Unboxed. Obviously, Hardware Unboxed is based, they stand on business, and they didn't like get scared of this. Other people who weren't as confident in their kind of content maybe would have bent the knee to Nvidia and allowed them to shove it up the ass.
But if they want to play dirty and pull the crap they played in this email, they can just bugger off. We do not need them. Hardware
Unboxed like, no, if you don't want to send us samples, if you don't want to work with us because we're not fitting your editorial direction, we're just not going to work with you. This also led to people like Linus also responded to the Hardware Unboxed situation. And really, this didn't look good for Nvidia. This was a huge PR disaster. And eventually, Nvidia started working with Hardware Unboxed again, just being way, way less pushy, at least from what it seemed.
Try changing editorial direction with us, of all of the outlets, made us talk to other media outlets to learn about their experience of it. And we'll have some of that later in the week as well.
But 30 series was a good generation of graphics cards, but I'm going to show you something that probably is going to bring nightmares to you. It's going to be PTSD when you see this image. Do you see that shit? Mining. Wait, let me scare you again. Boom. Ready for it? Boom! Another one. Crypto mining was a curse of the 30 series graphics card generation. Also a curse for AMD's graphics cards at the time as well. Crypto miners are probably to blame for the graphics chip shortage, because at the time there was a huge boom in crypto, which I don't know who really actually uses crypto, to be honest. They wanted to take the opportunity to cash in. That also was at a time when everybody is home for COVID. People actually wanted computers, so there's already a high demand for computer parts like graphics cards and that kind of stuff. And then crypto miners took this to a whole new level. So here is the price of Ethereum, which is a crypto coin. Who gives a shit? And then that shoots up to the moon. And as you can see, right along with it, GPU prices are also shooting to the moon. This is comparing the MSRPs of some of these graphics cards. So here's the NVIDIA ones, 127, 149%, 171%. As we see over time, eventually there was a peak where NVIDIA graphics cards were 304% of the MSRP. The only reason why this kind of worked out is because people had stimulus checks and they were just kind of spending some money on this kind of stuff, but this started to build some kind of resentment for it. And this has led to PTSD even to this day, where a bunch of people are still checking graphics cards at launch and everything to see how their pricing changes over time, because we don't want to be in the same situation. And this has even created a culture, because these crypto mining shortages were honestly, I think, the first time that graphics cards were legitimately scalped and resold to people at a much higher price. Today, we still see a lot of scalping going on with graphics cards. I remember when the 50 series launched, you couldn't get like a 5090 or anything like that, and people were already trying to sell them at like 2 times, 3 times, 4 times the MSRP. There's even been anti-scalping movements where some people will go on there and they'll actually try to scalp out bots. So a bot will try to buy a graphics card on the market, selling that bot a piece of paper and labeling it a 5090 or something like that, so that people would get fooled, or the bots would get fooled into buying it and get a piece of paper and be completely scammed and then not allow them to return it. It's actually caused trauma in the PC gaming community that there's now an anti-scalping movement. You could say that Nvidia, AMD, specifically talking about Nvidia here, but they're not really liable for what has happened here, because people just wanted graphics cards and they literally couldn't make enough because the capacity, the manufacturing capacity was actually limited at the time because of COVID. But then Nvidia also did some things that seem pretty scummy in order to, what I think, to leverage the situation to make as much money as possible, while at the same time trying to virtue signal that they're on gamers' sides. For example here, Nvidia made the RTX 3080 Ti. This was a graphics card that was stupid. Like, the original 3080 was a $700 graphics card, and the 3080 Ti was a like $1,200 graphics card. It really was only a little bit faster than a normal 3080. And it was clearly Nvidia trying to jack up the price to take advantage of people buying these graphics cards at much higher prices and getting scalped models as well. And Nvidia also, actually a little bit before the 3080 Ti did launch, they announced these LHR graphics card. It stands for low hash rate graphics cards, which are basically ones that were made in the factory to not be able to take advantage of crypto mining, or they're very bad at mining. This seemed like something that would be very pro-consumer, that Nvidia was looking at this and wanted to basically get graphics cards in the hands of gamers instead of in the hands of crypto miners. But at the same time though, a lot of people found many ways to bypass the low hash rate limitation and just get these graphics cards anyway. So this kind of just came off as this PR thing where Nvidia is trying to virtue signal that they're trying to get graphics cards to gamers. At least that's what it felt like. Now, I'm sure some people did buy these cards and appreciated they existed, but I don't think this was as effective as Nvidia maybe would have tried to make it out to be. This did obviously affect Nvidia. Their stock price went up a lot in this time. We're going to ignore the right side here because AI kind of went crazy and now Nvidia is worth trillions of dollars. But if we look just back at the beginning of 2020, when this crypto mining shortage started, to this point here in like 2022, they doubled in value from this time. They were very, very profitable off of this whole crypto shortage. So it's hard to deny they weren't trying to take advantage of the situation. And you can't really blame them as a company when they have to make as much profit as possible. It is their fiduciary responsibility as a publicly traded company. At the same time, this doesn't really give us that much trust that they're really looking out for gamers. Then that leads us to, I'm gonna take a drink of my tea, RTX 40 series. I better say 50 series. 50 series, it's given me trauma too because it's been so rough. Here's this comical picture of Jensen holding the 4090. It doesn't even look like you can hold this thing up because it's like 2 kilos, I'm pretty sure. I think it's pretty heavy. This is especially following the 30 series where everything was so overpriced and shortaged and really hard to buy anything if you even wanted to. So that's what we're coming off of contextually into the 40 series launch. On the surface though, 40 series was actually pretty decent, at least when you look at the 4090. Now we're talking about the other cards that were introduced at the beginning here too. But the 4090 looked pretty good, stacked up really well against the 3090, actually huge improvement, like 60% faster on average. But then if you actually go to Nvidia's website here, or even during the Nvidia presentation, if you scroll all the way down where they actually introduce the graphics cards, here's the 4090, here is the 4080. And now it's the 4080 16 gigabyte starting at $1,200, and then the 12 gigabyte model of the 4080 starting at $900. And that card was instantly sought out to be pretty mediocre, because when you break down the specs of the 4080 12 gigabyte, it literally looked like a 60 class card, but being charged $900. Nvidia unlaunched the 12 gigabyte 4080. Like, this card didn't even come out. It didn't end up existing in that name that it's currently placed at. But it's not that it didn't come out. The 4070 Ti actually became the 4080 12 gigabyte, and it came out about a month later than it was originally supposed to. The 4070 Ti was not really liked at all. Now with the launch of 40 series, some other stuff really did break out. EVGA, for example, a long-term, very loyal partner for Nvidia, ended up leaving them and just didn't, they never wanted to make graphics cards ever again. And this isn't a surprise because Nvidia is very, very pushy with their partners.
Undue pressure on their board partners to meet MSRP targets, not sustainable for their business. They put extremely restrictive guidelines in place for their board partners in terms of the types of products they could build in order to differentiate their own brand.
So EVGA was just one that ended up pulling out, but this isn't anything special for many other partners. They feel this pressure too. See, Nvidia has their grubby mitts clamped down, trying to control all their partners, saying what they can't make, what they can advertise on the boxes, what they can make them look like, which is so weird because it's kind of like behaving like a company that should be more like they make their own cards. They have their Founders Edition cards, but they're not sold in huge volumes, so it doesn't really make sense for those. But they're operating like a company that doesn't have partners. But also every single graphics card launch in 40 series, I don't know if there's a single one that was actually positive. We maybe had one that was decent. Okay, so here, the 4070 Ti, not that great. We obviously talked about that. The 4080 was also rough, the 16 gigabyte one, but also you see some reviews on RTX 4070. The 4070 was maybe the most okay graphics card, at least at launch. They did make a super series as well. There's also the 4060 Ti, which is pretty universally hated. I even called the 16 gigabyte version back then the worst graphics card ever made, or the worst GPU ever made. And that's because of how expensive it was for basically a 50 class card, but it was $500. And this made the situation where there's an 8 gigabyte version of the 4060 Ti and there's a 16 gigabyte version of the 4060 Ti. And there's a lot of differences between games, but they have the exact same name on the box and stuff, so it's hard to tell. And what this does is trick a lot of people that aren't as educated in the situation and don't know which graphics card would be okay for them. So they end up getting goofed and gaffed and getting the cheaper one, which is an 8GB card, which they're going to want to upgrade later, or that 8GB card will get thrown into a pre-built PC and then somebody will get screwed over by that card later in time. But NVIDIA, even today with 50 series, as this has come out, is doing the exact same thing with the 5060 Ti. Not a great look. There's an 8GB version and a 16GB version. AMD is doing the same thing with the 9060 XT as well. I don't really like that either. That doesn't even mention the RTX 4060, the entry point into getting a graphics card at all from NVIDIA from their current generation of 40 series. When it was 40 series, now it's 50 series. That was $300 to get a 4060 card. And when you actually look at the GPU die and stuff, it looks like a 50 class card. It is so small. It doesn't look like it's worth $300. I made a video about this. People obviously latched on to 1.3 million views. People have been watching this. But the 40 series GPUs weren't just rough from a value standpoint, like literally how much performance they're giving you for your dollar. Well, NVIDIA also, this is where they really started to fudge the results on a lot of their GPUs and everything. They started to mislead consumers by advertising what I'd say false advertisement. So here they say the RTX 40 series up to 4 times faster, powered by 3rd gen RTX architecture and NVIDIA DLSS 3. Now DLSS 3 introduced frame generation. Multiply your performance with AI. And this down here, it gives you some of the actual settings that they're using. 4K resolution, highest game settings, DLSS super resolution performance modes, this is actually rendering at 1080p. Frame generation on the 4090. So this is the 4090 performance. As you see, it's saying that, against like a 3090 or whatever the heck they're performing it or comparing it to, they're using frame generation, which doesn't actually render new frames. It just takes like 2 real frames in a game and then tries to interpolate the difference between the 2 frames, but it doesn't actually result in more performance because the latency of that, because it has to wait to hold the newest frame. This was kind of the start of NVIDIA starting to bullshit this kind of stuff. Now, this isn't to say that frame generation or DLSS super resolution can't be some like good technologies. They actually have some merit to them. It's really the advertisement that makes it feel pretty fake, like fake frames. When they advertise some things like the RTX 5060 or the 5070, they said a 5070 is as fast as a 4090, which is just not true whatsoever. But let's hop into game real quick and see the issues with like the 5060. I just loaded up Doom the Dark Ages. I don't know why the screen is kind of like locked over to the left side there. And I'm on the RTX 5060 right now. So let's go ahead and just do like ultra settings or something like that. Obviously some issues right away. We're at 1440p and in 2025 you can't play at native ultra settings on a 56. I would have thought would have been a mainstream resolution and graphics card for this time, but that's not what's happened at all. NVIDIA advertises some things in this game, say like frame generation. Here we can switch it to DLSS. Now if we wanted to maintain at native resolution, we'll set it to DLAA. That's native DLSS basically. Just off the rip, enabling DLAA. So now we're at 15 FPS. We're at like 40 something before. If we want to make this a little bit more playable on the 5060, but if we switch it down to quality, which renders the game more at 1080p and upscales it to 1440p, even with upscaling, it can still struggle to run Doom the Dark Ages at 1440p. So at high settings, we can get in the mid 40s with upscaling on the 5060. The big thing to notice on the left side of the screen is the latency measure. That is basically saying how long does it take your game to run after you move your mouse or move 2 times mode. You know, we're at about 45 FPS. You'd expect if you get 2 times the FPS, they'd be getting like close to 90, maybe like 80 if there's some loss, right? Isn't that funny? Our frame rate, by turning on frame gen, actually decreased. How the hell does that work? We were at 45 FPS before, and now we're at about 30. And our latency is actually almost it's more than 10 milliseconds higher. So frame generation obviously adds some latency, and because of the load on the GPU, it can actually give you worse frame rate sometimes. Now let's try to 4 times mode, and maybe we can overcome this issue if we turn on 4 times. Again, 4 times frame generation, and our frame rate is still below where we're at native, and our latency is even higher than we were at native. So why the hell is this happening? You'd think you'd be getting 4 times the frame rate. No, that's bullshit, because a lot of the situations that can happen on these lower tier NVIDIA graphics cards is they're so limited on VRAM. For example, the 5060 only has 8 gigabytes of VRAM, and all of these new NVIDIA features, frame generation, ray tracing, they require more VRAM on the GPU. So even though you might be buying it for the advertising of getting 4 times the frame rate or anything like that, you might not have enough VRAM to take advantage of it. You might not be able to take advantage of the ray tracing features that NVIDIA advertises so much on their graphics cards. Very scummy situation, and there's very little opportunity where you can actually make this work. And even because this is using the frame generation and it's using the upscaling, which both utilize the AI tensor cores on the GPU, sometimes the AI performance of like a 5060, if it doesn't have enough AI performance, it also can't keep up with all these engines trying to run all these AI models on them and trying to, make all those features that NVIDIA talks about so much on their GPUs. Now we can try to make this work. If we go ahead and take this down to performance upscaling, let's see if now with such a low resolution of being 720p upscaled to 1440p,
The Weaver waits.
Fools! 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 You're merely a pawn. You'll be mine. about? passes through me. Hell! Hell! Rah! Gah! Out of mana. Fools. 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 You will take my place. Gone. I did nothing wrong. my steel! And full ride! Frozen steel! Vengeful ride! Cold as death! Fools.